You are listening to the #1 real estate podcast where we talk with real estate agents and real estate professionals all across the world about the wins, losses, lessons, and stories so we can help you win in your local market today. My name's Cody from Sheridan Street. I'm joined with my co-founder and co-host of the Real Estate Growth Academy. How you doing, Vikram? We're like, I could touch you it's weird.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's great.
Like I'm pumped, dude. Like,
yeah,
I can see that there's like a little cotton ball on your microphone. Like this is cool. And we got a really cool guest today that I'm pumped about. Before we get started, we actually just got out of a really good event yesterday where we learned some really interesting facts about what's going on in the marketplace.
Yeah.
And who knows, maybe that'll come up in conversation, but it was a lot of fun.
Awesome. We have a very, very special guest with us today, Dan Rochon. How are you doing, my man? What's new and exciting in your world? We chatted, I think, probably 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
Why don't you give everyone kind of a high level overview on kind of like who you are, what you do, why you do it? Give us like kind of the Spark Notes version in 60 seconds or less.
45 seconds or less. My name's Dan Rochon. I sell real estate and I been doing this since 2007. I got my license to help people. I've done a lot of things in my career, but the number one thing I'd say I'm most proud of is that I've had no broke months since 2008 with an average of 10 sales a month as an agent.
No broke months. Tell me a little bit about no broke months. What does that mean to you? Because the vast majority of real estate agents have a lot of broke months. They endure a lot of pain. We know the averages this year. The average agent has sold less than 4 homes this year. I think 8% of real estate agents in the US have done more than 4 transactions. So there's a lot of broke real estate agents out there that are stressed, broke, burnt out, and don't know what the next right thing is for them. Tell us a little bit about No Broke Months, how you help, what you did early on in your career in order to essentially allow yourself no broke months.
Well, before you talk about that, what did you do before real estate?
Yeah, I waited tables and then I got my license in 2007. I had broke months for my 6 months, my first 6 months of my career, and struggled. Mm-hmm. And then my broker Karen, I met with her. I remember going to her, knocking on her door, and she peers up over top of her glasses. Come on in. She was annoyed. She was grading. I call her graded the contracts. This is like a school teacher, but this is back before .lib. So she's like grading and circling the contracts. And then she was annoyed I was coming in. I was like, Karen, we need to talk. And she's like, what? I'm like, this isn't working. He said, oh, okay, come sit down. And she's like, Dan, just keep doing what you're doing. I'm like, well, if I keep doing what I'm doing, I'm about to pay my mortgage on my credit card. Like, this don't work.
Yeah.
And that was probably the first glimpse that I had, or the first conversation that I had, of just like discovering your way, discovering my way, and discovering a way. Like don't try to do 10 million things. Instead, discover your superpower. Now let's lean into that. And that's what I did. And then so I had my first close in April 2008. And I was able to buy the brokerage that I worked for in April 2009. So that was 18 months after I got my license. That was a KW franchise. And I was the operating partner for that franchise for the next 10 years after that. But it's really just discovering one way initially to make sales, which resonated with me. Okay. Instead of trying to be the expired agent, the FSBO agent, the door knocker, the networker, and all those things, which today I do a lot of those. But I've built them through time. But initially I say, just, figure out like, what is it that you love to do as an agent? Now freaking go do that. If it's open houses, go do that. Make that your job.
Because 2008, I mean, that was a extraordinarily tough period of time to get into real estate. I feel like 2008 is what 2023 or 2020. Yeah. End of 2022, starting in 2023 is going to be like, probably worse, but we'll see what next year holds for people.
Well, for me to be successful earlier on, it was short sales. Will that be something valid in the next near future? There'll be a piece of it. So basically anybody that's bought between 2020 to 22, maybe like 6 months before now, like during that 18 to 24 month window, that needs to sell 18 months from now, those are going to be short sale candidates. But I don't think you're going to see that play into the market for another, until probably the end of 2023, maybe into 24, before you actually see that start playing into the marketplace. But guess what?
It might not fully play in just because
it may not
have equity.
Yeah.
There's a lot of equity in the market, but that was your one thing.
Yeah.
You learned short sales.
In that time. Yeah. My third year in business, I closed 109 transactions. I did that with myself, a partner, and an assistant, and it was like going a million miles a minute, with like the hubcaps falling off. It was messy as can be.
And most people don't have any clue what short sales are, but those are intense,
A lot of work.
Paperwork and paper trails with the bank. It's like, it's an insane amount of,
particularly
nonstop.
then, Vikram. Yeah, particularly then, because today it would be different because they had a learning curve then as well, right? Like they didn't know what the hell they were doing back then, and they had to figure out all their systems. Today, it would probably be an easier business because the banks, even though they're not really using the systems, but they do have systems in place.
Let's chat a little bit about systems, because I think this is super important conversation to have, because you chose something, but then it sounds like you created a system or you went all in and became obsessed about short sales. How do real estate agents become obsessed about one thing, and how do they create a system when they have no idea what that even means? Like, a lot of agents come into this space very similar, like, waiting tables, or they come into space with not much experience. And we hear all the time, they come into space, they're like, my broker hasn't taught me anything. I don't know what the next right thing is for me.
Yeah.
How do you recommend that real estate agents, in the lack of training, because we already know the ecosystem in its entirety is broken, how do they get the knowledge, and how do they figure out what the right next thing is for them without necessarily being around people that know what they're doing?
So I would say there's really two steps. Number one is, you could do this in about 30 minutes. You can figure out a game plan. So first step, write down every single way you think you could get business. Just brainstorm, just mind dump it, right? Just like FSBOs, open houses, door knock. I don't care if it makes you want to puke or not, write everything down on a piece of paper. Then take that piece of paper and put it to the side. Then start answering some real questions and be honest with yourself. What am I great at doing? What do I suck at doing? What do I get? And what do I get power when I do it? What do I get joyfulness? What do I love to do? And don't even think about business when you ask those questions, right? Like, what in the past have I done that I really did well? What would my spouse, my boyfriend, my girlfriend, what would they say I do really well? My best friend. And then have nothing to do with business at all. And really discover where you're great and where you are not great. Then you take those two pieces of paper and now you sort of just cross them. And you look at the one with, here's all my beautiful strengths that God gave me and all the things that I am weak at. And here's all the options that I have. Now you just simply sit there and say, what are my strengths and my weaknesses, and how do I match my strengths up with the options? Circle that, circle no more than 3 of those. And the first one, the number one, that's your mission.
Love it.
And that's the way you could figure this out in 30 minutes.
You have a mindset of something, right? And it's, to me, the number one thing that holds people back is their mind is weak. They didn't get into real estate for the right reasons, right? They're not entrepreneurs. They're not salespeople, right? I wrote a post on LinkedIn and it was like, if you're not a salesperson.
I got into sales because I love homes. Maybe rethink it.
Yeah. Like, so when you look at people, right, and you look at yourself and you go back to, your first $100,000 a year, which was probably, year 1.5 or something in the business. And then you just took off and started annihilating it. You came in with a different mindset. And I like to get into like the psychology of people, because it's, the tactics are great, but if your mind is all messed up, you're not going to do the work. So waiting tables, because a lot of, one of the guys that worked for me waited tables for 4 years, had a real estate license for 4 years, sold 2 houses or 3 houses in 4 years, came to me, scrubbed it clean, wiped the slate, 20 houses that first year. So what is the mindset necessary to be successful in real estate?
So to give you something that's actionable, it's, you hear a lot of these coaches, you hear a lot of these mentors, these gurus say, hey, find your big why. Okay, I get it. And I don't necessarily, I agree with that, yet I say, find your little why, find your no BS why, right? For me, it was like, I am never going back to wait tables again. Okay. So now that's not like this, I'm going to go save the world type thing. That's a for real, right? So maybe right now you're thinking like, I don't want to go drive an Uber, or maybe you're thinking like, I'm doing this so that I could just pay my mortgage, so I could just do something. and get real with I call it the lowest denominator why, the no BS. Like, why do you sell real estate? Then ask yourself a series of questions, which is what's important to me about that? What's important to me about that? What's important to me about that? Until you come up with an answer that just like sings to your heart. And then you scrub everything in between off, so that today, what I go by today is I sell real estate so I can pay for my daughter Maggie's school, for her private school, which means that I'm a worthy dad. That's a no BS. Boom. That's it for me.
Yeah.
Right now, once upon a time, it was so that I never go wait tables again. Another part of my career, it was so that I can get out of this freaking cramped townhome I'm busting at the seams with my infant daughter at the time. Right. And I'm renting out 2 rooms to roommates because I couldn't afford to be able to even live in the townhome. And it was like, how do I go and afford to buy something that's, that's a larger, place that I can raise a family in, so it's just getting real with your little why.
I love that. The idea of kind of the non-negotiable, the little why, the thing that like is going to drive you to actually take action. And there's this common misconception with real estate agents that there's no money in the marketplace, especially like buyers are buying and sellers aren't selling. That's kind of like, there's a fear right now in the marketplace. I don't know if you can speak to that, because what we learned last night was there's actually a lot of money in the marketplace, and there's a lot of free money available and banks are trying to figure out how to give the money away. It's just realtors don't necessarily always know the right things or the right people, and they don't have the education. Like, how can real estate agents get the education that they need in order to make educated decisions and help people with education to make informed, intelligent decisions? Like, how did you do that early on? Because it sounds like you did something really well, but it also it sounded like there was some education element towards what you did as well.
Yeah. I mean, I do consider myself as a teacher. Okay.
Yeah.
So as a real estate agent coach, I'm a teacher. As a real estate agent, I'm a teacher.
Yep.
Right. So, and now what makes you a teacher? Well, first of all, it's studying your craft. So I mentioned to you before that I was a broker owner for many, many years, for 10 years. And at the very, very beginning, what I sucked at doing was contracts. But here I own this brokerage. I got 150 some agents or whatever that I'm leading. And I'm the guy that's supposed to be able to know these contracts inside and out. So what did I do? I started teaching real estate principles class, because I figured, like, if this is like my weakness, let me lean into it. Today, I know contracts like nobody's business, right? Because I decided to take action to become an expert at it and put myself in a position where I had to be the most knowledgeable person in the room because I was the instructor. So I think it's just understanding and say, okay, well, what are you going to do? Pay attention, like, for example, know how to explain what has just happened to us over the last 2.5 years. Know how to explain what happened February, March, April of 2020, deer in headlights. June 2020, people from the condos say, hey, we want to move outside to get more space. And now you have this influx of a supply and demand where there's greater demand than a supply, prices go up, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Know how to explain that to your clients. Know how to explain to them right now, well, what's driving interest rates to go up? Because the overnight Fed, the rate that when a bank closes the shop for the end of the day, they have to have a certain amount of deposits in their bank. Mm-hmm. Now, if they don't have enough money in the bank, they have to go borrow it overnight from the government. The government has increased those rates, which then they pass that on to the consumer. What's caused the government to increase those rates? To control inflation. Okay. Yet, since 1971, the average 30-year mortgage is at 7.46%.
We're normal right now.
We're better than normal right now.
Yeah, we're like 6.7, 6.8 for
we're
average
better
credit.
than normal. It depends when they're watching this, right? But this second, we're better than normal. So now here's the thing. You guys didn't prompt, like, I didn't know you were going to ask that question.
Right.
But because I'm immersed in the market and I pay attention, you have to be ready to answer a question without any prompting. You have to be able to communicate with your prospect or your client so that they understand, and you become the market economist for real estate. That's what a great agent does. They study their craft, and then they combine that knowledge with the persuasiveness of sales to be able to get people to take action so that they can get what they want.
Well, here's a crazy stat. in 1980, the mid 80s, and it'll probably make sense to you. I'm not sure how old your daughter is, but your daughter's probably 10, 12 years old
She's
from the
11,
sounds
yeah.
of it.
You know, yep, she's 11.
So based off of the numbers in the 1980s, 85s, there was about 40% financial literacy based off of some scale. Now it's a 19% financial literacy. So education has gone up, but the real education, which is financial literacy, is going down. And the people, right? People always say who you choose matter, who you use matters, right? But it's those same people that say that slogan, just they have a lot of great slogans, but they don't have a lot of umph behind their slogans.
Substance.
With 19% financial literacy, we were at the National Association of Hispanic Real Estate Professionals yesterday. We were on stage speaking. It was really awesome. And what we saw from one of the speakers was that majority of people go to their friends and family as a first source of financial education. The majority of people go to a financial person or a broker or a loan officer as the third resource for financial literacy and when they're buying a home. The only community that didn't do that was the African-American community, right? Where they were going out to a professional first to get educated on what to do. So when we are being educated, right? When consumers are being educated by people with opinions and people without facts, it totally tarnishes the market. And right now what we're seeing is we're seeing the big box, right? Whatever channel you want to watch spewing out what I don't want to use the term misinformation, but information that's either 6 months behind or it's 6 years wrong. And so you as a leader, obviously in your marketplace, and you've been one since you got in, because I can just tell you like to break things down to the simple, right? I think that's probably one of your superpowers, Dan, is that you're able to simplify things to make them digestible and palatable and then action taken. Because if they're complex, you don't take action. I like to get into the brains of people. Cody likes to talk about the tactics of people. For me, it's how do we stress the importance, right? Because there are real estate agents out there, Dan, and I coach them all the time. You coach them all the time, and they sell a shitload of houses and they don't have the first effing clue about anything. They're just like, hey, let's go. They're good on the phone. They're good at getting people in front of them and they're good at closing transactions. But if you actually sit down and talk to them about money, they have no idea what profit is. They have no idea what cash flow is. They have no idea about, right? There's so many real estate agents that make hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars, but they'd never buy a rental for themselves.
It's about understanding the product that you're serving, right? But again, it's combining that knowledge with the persuasive skills. Okay, so what you just described, Vikram, was there's agents that have persuasive skills and they may sell a lot of real estate. There's agents who have a lot of knowledge and candidly, without the persuasive skills, they're going to sell few homes. Okay, because we all know those agents that, I'm not saying this derogatory, that know a lot, right? I was going to say like know it all, because but that's sort of, that's not what I'm trying to say, right? We know those agents who have a lot of information,
right?
But if you're not able to communicate it in a way that you can help somebody else understand what it means to them. Okay, so it's not just having the information, it's not just knowing the information, because anybody can look at a chart, anybody can say, okay, well, here's the interest rate today, 6.76%. But what does that mean to the averages? Well, how do we get somebody to take action on that when you say, well, guess what? Right now, they've risen this far, and we're still in a good spot today because we're below average. And you know what scares me? If we don't take action today and we wait 18 months, we'll likely be above average. Right. So it's taking that second step to then explain to them what that means to them. And, oh, by the way, Mr. Buyer, in this case, what's the worst case scenario if you don't buy and interest rates rise? You have to then buy. You have to then buy at a higher price. What's the worst case scenario if you do buy and interest rates lower?
You refinance.
You refinance. Of those two choices, which puts you in a better position? So now it's not only knowing the information, but then helping other people understand the information so that they make smart decisions. And that's a win-win for everybody, because you're positioning your client, your consumer, making a better choice. I had a client, oh my goodness, I wasn't able to coach him. We were under contract for less than 24 hours. A 62-year-old first-time home buyer flips out about the media. Okay. And I was not successful in guiding him. But here's the unfortunate reality. If he waited 62 years, I got him, out of the contract with no recourse to him, because that's the right thing to do as a fiduciary.
Absolutely.
The reality of it is what's he going to do 5 years from now? Wait till the next market cycle. Well, he's going to be 67 years old in 5 years, right? So the reality of it, and he's got a wife that's 20 years younger than him. Now, I'm not saying this to be judgmental. I'm saying this to just this reality, right?
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm giving you a great example because I failed in this instance, right? But I at least had every opportunity. Like, my intention was to help him. Really to help his wife.
Yeah.
Well, you were trying to set them up for long-term success.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
if you didn't take action now, you're not going to take action probably ever. You know, what's an interesting fact is that right now, one of the growing demographics is head of household women in their mid 40s, first-time home buyers.
Yeah.
Well, 40% of the marketplace we know right now are first-time home buyers. So I'm interested in how you're approaching from a coaching perspective when you're speaking to real estate agents, because we hear a lot where it's like, well, I want to be a listing agent.
Sure.
And that's cool. Like, I understand, I get it. Like, it's, can be easier. What is your take on the buyer seller side and where real estate agents should start out? Like, when an agent pops into your world for the first time, obviously you teach them, hey, we need to figure out our thing, your next right thing. But I'm curious to know your thought process right now, especially in the market that we're in, around not working with buyers, around, only working with sellers. Like, what are some of your thought process around that, and what actually it takes in order to build a successful business?
There are just as many buyers as there are sellers 100% of the time. So now that you know that, and we have to sit there and choose, there's a couple factors to it. One is what's going to be easier for you. All right. For me, I've always been a listing agent. I've always been listing heavy. But if you look at a business and you say, let's say a business is 80% listings and 20% buyers, that business has an opportunity cost.
Yep.
Flip it, and you've got 80% buyers and 20% listings, that business has a risk. Okay. So if you're looking like a healthy business, and this is, if I was a brokerage owner, this is what I'd be looking at, what I once upon a time looked at. I'd be looking at 60% listings, 40% buyers. That's a nice healthy mix because you're not leaving things on the table.
Yeah.
And you're positioning yourself so that you have greater control over the marketplace. Now, that all being said, I'm going to still revert back to you do you. Okay.
Yeah.
Because if you don't resonate with listings, don't freaking do them. And if you don't resonate with buyers, don't freaking do them. Yeah. Right. It still goes into, even though like this is the logical, like best case scenario of an agent's business is the 60-40 listings buyers, but you got to work for what works for you.
Got to make money at the end of the day.
You got to make money at the end of the day.
You got to make money. And like, that's in 100% is the thing. It's like your business strategy needs to actually make money.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if you get buyers, if you get sellers. What I want my clients to do is get fucking paychecks right now. Like, let's just get fucking paid right now, because there's too many people in the industry that aren't getting paid. And they're like, well, I was told to do this. And I'm like, look, there's a time to grow into everything, right? 60-40, 50-50, 70-30. I don't care what it is. When I started out, I was super heavy on buyers. And guess what? 3 years later, we had enough listings that I didn't have to go drive around like a, crazy person. And I had so many buyers because the markets were 2013 and 14, right? 2011, it was hard as hell. 2013, 14 in the Seattle Bellevue area, it was buyers everywhere. We were able to build a team. It was fun. It was great. They took the buyers. I took the sellers. Everybody made a ton of money and it was great. I don't like driving. Like, I'm just eternally, I'm a lazy guy that wants to just chill out and ride a bicycle.
You realize how contradicting that is, right?
I do. I can ride a bicycle for like 5 hours straight. So I'm not really lazy, but
all right.
Like, I don't want to do the things I don't want to do. Right. And that's what you keep saying. And I wish I could just drum it into real estate people's heads. I mean, entrepreneurs in general, but I wish I could just drum it into their heads that there is no right way of doing business. There is just the way you get paid.
Yeah.
And if you don't get paid, you are not in business. Like, so stop worrying about, I take calls, Dan, and I know you do too. Oh, I just want to do social media. How's that working for you? Well, I haven't sold anything from it, but I'm just going to do it. Well, you're obviously, how long have you been doing this for? 4 months. It's not working. Well, I don't want to pivot because I got to do it for another 8 months. How much money do you have saved up? Not much. I live with my parents. This is not going to work out well, bro. Like, come on, man. And Cody and I were chatting yesterday, and it's like, I like to teach people how to get into a higher price point. Not because the lower price points don't pay. It's just, you're going to do the same work. Why don't you learn to get a little bit more, right? We got to match inflation.
If you're going to get paid, you're going to get paid more, and it's the same amount of work. And it's probably even easier work, because when you're looking at the first time home buyer, there's that emotions that are associated with it. There's the ability, they may have challenges with financing. There's all kinds of added stuff. For the lower one, it's actually harder. Do it easier and make more money.
Yeah. But you know what it is it's a mindset thing.
Totally.
When you are trying to go, it's a self-worth thing. And this is why I always try to come back to the psychology, because if your self-worth is at a median price house in the community you're in, that might be 300, that might be 600, right? Wherever you're at. Sure. But if you're like, I'm just an average person, you're going to sell average price houses. If you start to believe that you are above average, you start to sell above average. If you believe you're below, you sell below. And we were talking, he's like, well, people can't just take high-end listings. And I said, I get it. You got to take what you get paid. So again, people say, because people always say, I want to do luxury, I want to do listings, I only want to do social media, I don't want to door knock, I don't want to cold call, and they're not getting paid because they have all these no's, but there's no other side with a yes.
Yeah, well, luxury is not a house. Luxury is a person.
Yeah, it's
a lifestyle. Luxury is a lifestyle. It's an attitude. So I'm curious to know, like, how do you people find their right thing? Other than, it's like choose one thing and go all in. It's like everyone's telling me to do 50 different things. Like, how do you just choose the one? When do you know when to cut off something that isn't necessarily working?
Yeah.
How long should somebody do cold calling if they choose that is their thing?
Yeah.
And when do they know it's working, and when do they know it's not working? Because I think that it can serve an audience at a really high level.
Well, first of all, you got to break that down into two pieces, long-term and short-term, because there are techniques that won't deliver anything short-term.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So if you're looking at like a long-term strategy, 18 months, okay. A short-term strategy, 90 days.
Totally.
If I'm in the Seattle market, if I'm in any market, like you airdrop me in, I have a payday in 90 days. But I'm not going to rely on video marketing as an example, or neighborhood geographic farming or sociographic farming, which all are going to take me 18 months. I'm going to do those, but that's sort of like my, oh, by the way type stuff. Instead, I'm going to do what's going to pay me today. And that's what I'm going to focus on. I would have a payday in 90 days in any market I went into. So what am I going to do? Typically, it's going to be for sale by owners. It's going to be open houses, or it's going to be advertising on Facebook. One of those three strategies will generate me a payday in 90 days or less. Different tactics on that. So then you sit there and say, well, which one? Now there's others than just those. I'm just giving you three, right? Yeah. How do you know if it pays you or not? Well, do you have a payday in 90 days or not?
Do you have a contract that goes into escrow within 60 days? If you are you worried? I mean, it's really easy. Like if your goal is that I need to get a paycheck in 90 days, at 30 days is what you're doing. Do you have a list of people that are ready to purchase or sell? No. Yeah. Okay. So then whatever you're doing, you're not going to have a payday in 90 days because you're still going to need to acquire a client. You're going to need to put them in escrow, and they're going to need to close. So you're at least 60 days out. So it's like, okay, well, I tried this strategy. It's not working. Do I need to continue the strategy and tweak it? Or do I need to get a new strategy? Right? If you're doing one open house a month, you're probably not going to have a payday.
But here's the thing, Vikram, if you're doing open houses and that's your strategy, and if I went into a new market today, I'm doing 4 open houses, 4 weekends in a row, every weekend.
Yeah, at least.
I'm doing 16 open houses in the next 30 days.
At least.
Okay. So 100%, I know I'm going to get somebody from those 16 open houses that will write an offer within 30 days from that period, which gets me a payday within 90 days. It's that simple.
Right. It's clarity. So again, I go back to you, and I love. I know that if we got off camera, we could have a great like we could rap for hours, and we're coming up on our time. But it's clarity of focus. It's simplifying the tasks, and it's putting a plan and an enormous amount of effort behind that plan so that you can get the results you want. You have a definitive time period. I need a payday in 90 days. Great. I'm going to do open houses. Great. I'm going to do 16 open houses in 30 days. Awesome. Out of that 16 open houses, the first 2 weekends, I might need to have somebody help me with my strategy because maybe I'm not collecting enough prospects to make conversations with, or I'm getting a lot of prospects, but I'm not getting appointments. You're going to go in and analyze every move you're making, right?
Yeah.
And you're not just gonna, you're not just, you're looking at the tape, right? If you go to a sports analogy, you're doing the plays, you're looking at the tape, you're running a game plan of some sort. It might be the right one, it might be the wrong one, but you're continuously taking action moving forward, and you're keeping it super simple.
That's it, man. That's it.
Man,
Dan, I just want to say thank you for your time today. I think that, just ton of value today, for any agent that wants no broke months, which I would hope that any agent listening to this
and 10 deals,
podcast,
10 deals a month
would want no broke months. If somebody were to want to reach out to you and have a conversation about real estate or about no broke months, where is the best place that we can send them?
www.nobrokemonths.com.
Could you spell that out?
Yeah. nobrokemonths.com. I love it. Dan, bottom of my heart. Thank you for joining us today on the Real Estate Agent Podcast. Really do appreciate it, you. And thank you for tuning in another episode of the Our Agent Podcast. We will see you soon.
Peace.